So the major difference in this next iteration is that instead of just having player number one being the striker, we're now able to select any of the players to be the striker. So if, for example, let's show the line here. I've currently got player number three selected, and if I selected number four, then number four is now the striker, and we see a white line going from four to the target. Now this is facilitated by a change in the way that the new striker is determined in the stroke manager, but it's also facilitated by this nice looking sort of player timer scoreboard thing here. There's quite a lot of little buttons on here for us to use moving forward. The only ones we're using at the moment are these buttons here which are used to activate the player as the striker. So if I press number 9, that activates ball number 9 as the striker. The other major change is that we now have an aim line on the three-dimensional view. So that's again controlled as an update in the stroke manager. And when we play a shot, you'll notice that the stroke button disappears until the ball has stopped moving, and then it reappears again. So this is a way of just making sure that we don't press the stroke button while the ball is already in motion, or if any of the balls are in motion. And that implies that we've now got a way of monitoring whether the balls are in motion. And the presence of this stop button here is again a clue that we might want to stop the movement of the balls prematurely, or if they seem to not coming to a stop in due time. So all of the changes were in the stroke manager, and basically the major change at the beginning is that we catalogue all the rigid bodies of the balls. So we start off by defining a list of rigid bodies, and then we put each of the 10 balls, rigid bodies, into that list. And that will be used later on to monitor their motion. The most significant change, though, is the presence of this function here, the new striker function. Basically, when you click one of these buttons, it triggers the new striker function, and the button has associated with it an integer which is passed into the function. And that enables the correct striker ball to be selected and the correct mini graphic on the mini map to be assigned as the striker graphic. Now, importantly, as soon as you do that, you're basically saying, I want the information to come from the mini-map. So we make the balls from lawn equal false, and then we just do some cosmetic stuff. We just turn all the buttons grey, and we do that by first creating a list of all the buttons. So what you'll notice is that in the there are these 10 buttons, and if we have a look at the controller, then what we'll see is these buttons have been actually placed into a list of buttons, and that is that enables us to cycle through the buttons and change their background image to grey. Having done that, we can just highlight the one that we've selected, and so that's all that's happening here. If uh, the integer is an odd or even number, we'll either get everything going red or everything going white. And that will apply also to the lines, the aim lines that are drawn in both the two-dimensional and the three-dimensional view. Now, the other major change that we alluded to is that during the update cycle, we are drawing a line between the target and the striker ball in the three-dimensional view. And this works in a very similar way to the dynamic aim line that was drawn in the two-dimensional view. The only annoying thing here is that I've had to put in a little fiddling factor to get the line the right length. And I don't know why I've had to do this, because in all of my other planning and everything, I never had to do that. It's only when I came to re-engineer it now that I've had to put that in. I will eventually sort that out. But the good news is that it does actually work. So you can see that as I change the target and the striker ball relative to each other, that line in the three-dimensional view is just the right length, just linking the target and the striker ball. So that works really, really nicely. But there is just that annoying fiddle in there. Now, when we hit the stroke button, when we press the hit button, we want to actually transfer control to the lawn, because we want to put the force on the ball and let the three-dimensional physics sort things out. The 2D map just needs to show us the position of the balls. We're no longer dragging things around on the 2D map. We're letting the 3D view play the shot. So this is a very, very important line here. When we hit the button, we have to transfer control to the lawn. And that's why we've actually got rid of these bits here. If you remember, they were switching the source for us, but we don't need those anymore, because we're only ever going to deal with the 2D view, just switching to 3D view when we need to hit the ball. As I mentioned, the hit button becomes inactive as soon as we've hit it, and that's just so that we don't hit it twice during a shot. Everything about the actual shot, the impulse that's put on the ball, remains the same. The only thing that's different is that we start to monitor whether the balls have come to a standstill, and that's done by this little coroutine here, which is called after we've played the shot. Basically, it scrolls through all the rigid bodies on all 10 balls and asks the question, are they sleeping or not? And if they're not sleeping, the balls, at least one ball is still moving. As soon as all 10 balls are sleeping, then this while loop ends and we can reinstate control to the 2D view, and we can switch the button, the stroke button back on. Now, one of the little peculiarities is that sometimes you'll hit a ball, particularly after it's hit a leg of a gate or hit another ball, and the ball doesn't stop spinning. And that, of course, would mean that this routine here would still think the ball was moving, and we'd just get stuck in a never-ending loop. So in case that happens, we've got this escape button here, which is stopping all of the balls. So that's triggered by pressing the stop button, and that will actually forcibly stop everything. So you can actually see that in action by pressing stroke and immediately pressing stop. See, the ball has stopped midstream. So that's the all of the changes now. We've got almost not quite a functional game. We can play strokes with all of the balls. We can, as soon as the balls have come to an end, we can play other shots. And before the balls have come to an end, though, things are a bit more difficult. And so this is a good example. Something hasn't stopped, so I'm going to press stop, and now we can stroke. So yeah, we've got something where we can start bashing a few balls around, and we'll see where this takes us in the next section.